I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside, it's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off road. The guy managed the group. He was like, "What are you doing in this beautiful car?" I'm like, "I'm going off road." He's like, "Are you sure? Because you can use one of ours." And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, "No, no, 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 we're going to do this." And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability as well as its robust interior are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
The McNugget Buddies are back. But this time, they got a fresh look as part of the new Kerwin Frost box at McDonald's. We're talking all new Buddies, dressed head to toe in the freshest fits, all designed by the artist Kerwin Frost. So when you order the Kerwin Frost box with your choice of 10-piece McNuggets or a Big Mac, you'll get one of the flyest McNugget Buddies to go with it. Think you can collect them all? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it.
At participating McDonald's for a limited time while supplies last.
Chris Ullman has had an amazing life. First, he was the world whistling champion. He won it 4 times. Second, he was basically the head of PR and communications for many successful, huge politicians, presidential candidates, governors, and advisor to several billionaires. He's in, most notably, he worked for 18 years for David Rubenstein, who runs the Carlyle Group. He's been on this podcast quite a few times. And Chris just wrote a book, For Billionaires and a Parking Attendant. Lessons he's learned from all these different billionaires and politicians, and lessons he also learned from a parking attendant. But prior to that, he also wrote a book called Find Your Whistle, and it's his adventures on the way to being the world whistling champion. So we talk about both topics. It's part 1 and part 2. The first part is basically, how do you be the best in the world at what you love doing? Whistling is not easy, and being the world champion at any art form is not easy. We talk about that. Then part 2, we talk about 4 billionaires and a parking attendant, and the stories are incredible. At the end of part 2, Chris also whistles for us. So let's start off with becoming the world champion at the thing you love doing. That's part 1 coming up. And then part 2 will be the next podcast. And it'll be all about lessons he learned from the billionaires and a parking attendant.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
So Chris, we can really almost do 2 podcasts with you. One is you were the world whistling champion several times, many times, which is an amazing thing in and of itself. And I want to talk about that. Also, you have a book that just came out, 4 Billionaires and a Parking Attendant. And you've worked with all these billionaires and gotten great life advice or life learnings from them. And also a parking attendant in the parking lot where you often parked. So
Yeah.
both of these books are amazing, and you've had an amazing life still having it. I honestly don't know where to start. So let's start with whistling. You started whistling at the age of 5. How does someone even become world whistling champion?
Well, James, thanks for having me. First of all, it's a real honor to be on your show. And so my father was a good whistler. And So much of it comes down to, can you whistle? And it's very binary. I've met a lot of people in my life who just cannot whistle. They go, nothing comes out, versus that coming out. And so I'm able to whistle. And then, since I do public relations for a living, I think in talking points. I'm able to whistle. I love to practice. I'm competitive. I'm good at arranging music for my instrument, the whistle. I'm a bit of a showman, and I found the international whistling competition back in 1993. Competed 9 times, won it 4 times, came in second a few times, and it was a great run. And I don't compete anymore. I just perform, and I also whistle "Happy Birthday" 650 times a year for people, which is I call my birthday a whistling ministry.
Why do you whistle happy birthday to people?
I want to honor their lives. And what's so interesting about happy birthday is usually you sing it for your family or your colleagues if you're in an office. But I actually get to insert myself into the lives of 650 people and bring them these like little packets of joy. Like I just did 3, literally like 5 minutes ago. I whistled happy birthday 3 times, and I recorded on my iPhone a little voice memo, and I just text it to them. And then people write back these amazing notes. They say, "You made my day. My day wouldn't be complete if I didn't have a whistlegram from you." And so it warms my heart. And I'm just convinced that we need to like stop thinking about ourselves and think about other people. If every day I have to be nice to someone through whistling, it's good. It keeps me humble.
And as you describe in the book, your kind of domination of the whistling world, if you want to call it that, and it takes a lot of practice. You have a huge repertoire of songs you could whistle. You obviously have the talent and the skill, but you have to work at the skill. I'm curious, the process of becoming a whistling champion. It's really a champion at anything, but for you, whistling, the process of becoming a whistling champion, world whistling champion, do you think that helped you career-wise? And I'm asking in 2 different directions. One is because everyone's impressed that you're the best in the world at something. And number 2, because of the discipline it took to become, and the way of thinking it takes to become the best in the world at something.
Yeah, that process of like coming up with this idea saying, wow, I'm a pretty good whistler. Maybe I could be the best one day. So like it actually sets you on a journey. So, first it's a mindset. You have an objective. And then day in and day out, you have to figure out, how do I get there? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And this applies, as you just said, you could be a violinist, a trombonist, or a hedge fund manager like you. And so you have to think, what is it going to take to get there? And so with whistling, it is, for me at least, it was a combination of making sure I had uh, a really wide range. In my peak form, I had over a 3-octave range, which is a pretty wide range. And then the capacity to arrange music for your instrument. So I can listen to a Beethoven symphony and I have to figure out a lot of notes going on there. I have to figure out how to catch the tune or the main theme. So I was very good at that, and just being relentless. And my new book, 4 Billionaires and a Parking Attendant, there's all these people in there. They are just relentless. They set their sights on something and just go, go, go. And like I did this crazy thing in 1996. I was training for the training. You really do, for the international competition.
Of course,
And
it's
so I got
training.
my.
Wait, I'm just
It
curious.
is.
Why did you almost seem a little ashamed when you said the word training?
Because people, for years, people have said to me, "Do you practice?" And I used to be insulted, and I would say, "What do you mean, do I practice? How can you be good at anything if you don't practice?" But I realized that people think whistling is just a silly little thing, and why would you have to practice to be good at it? So I've actually become a little insecure about it. So I'm glad you picked up on that.
I want to ask you about that, like, because many areas of life can seem frivolous, right? So let's say some people think whistling is that way. That's the reaction you got from some people. But also taking a inflated ball and throwing it through a net as many times as possible in a 60-minute period. That could be considered frivolous too. And yet, some people make 80 million a year doing it. So I always wonder about this. Like, yes, some recreational activities are considered frivolous and some are considered worthy of 80 million a year. And the NBA has 10 billion in revenues a year. So money has sort of like set the bar on frivolity.
Yeah.
And yet there's nothing to some. Whistling is musical, it's creative, it's very difficult. There's nothing that makes whistling more frivolous than basketball, other than the fact that basketball is a $10 billion industry, so we take it a little more seriously somehow. I'm just curious if there's anything.
Yeah.
Like,
No, and those are very good points. What's happened with the challenge with whistling, which is why people kind of put it in the frivolous category or the novelty category, is that there is not a lot of music written for Whistler. Now, that may sound strange, but it helps legitimize an instrument. I mean, if you want to, if you go to the classical music catalog, there's tons of music for violin and trumpet and cello, piano, but you'll find almost nothing for Whistler. So, for example, I reached out, this is years ago, to 50 orchestras and said, I can whistle Mozart's oboe concerto. Can I perform with you? And 2 of them said yes, but 48 of them completely ignored me. And it's because they're used to hearing the Andy Griffith theme song or men catcalling women. And so there's been this group of us who've tried to legitimize whistling and take it from novelty to art. And with some success, I mean, I've whistled with 12 symphony orchestras, and other whistlers. There's this guy in the Netherlands named Geert Chartreux, who's arguably the best whistler today. I mean, he's whistled with many orchestras. So there's a small, little contingent of us who are taking it to the next level, but we don't have all that infrastructure. We don't have the music written for us. There aren't whistling schools. So we kind of train on our own. And you'll actually find that most whistlers are good singers because they actually learned how to make music by singing. And then that is very transferable to whistling.
That's interesting. I wouldn't think it was, because I feel like you could have a sense of, what's it called when you have perfect pitch?
Perfect pitch, yeah.
It's easier to have correct pitch with whistling, I would think, than singing, because the vocal cords connection to the brain, it seems like it's not as fast.
No. If you have perfect pitch, you can hum a note, you could sing a note, you could whistle a note. It really has, or you could get a trombone and play it if you know how to play a trombone and get to the right note. So I don't have perfect pitch. I have what I call a kind of perfect relative pitch. Like once I'm in the right key, I can stay in the right key. But there are people who you can say to them, hum an A flat, and boom, they can just hum it in the absence of any reference point.
These days, we're all investors, trying to be smart with our money despite our worst impulses. But at iShares, we believe that deep down inside of every investor is a better investor. One that's just waiting to be let out. Explore iShares ETFs and insights and let your best investor out. Visit iShares.com for more information.
The McNugget Buddies are back. But this time, they got a fresh look as part of the new Kerwin Frost box at McDonald's. We're talking all new buddies, dressed head to toe in the freshest fits, all designed by the artist Kerwin Frost. So when you order the Kerwin Frost box with your choice of 10-piece McNuggets or a Big Mac, you'll get one of the flyest McNugget Buddies to go with it. Think you can collect them all? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it.
At participating McDonald's for a limited time while supplies last.
So again, people ask if you train. And going back to that, like people ask if you
Yeah.
train, and of course, you train quite a bit. Like, what was a? And by the way, we're going to get to the 4 billionaires and a parking attendant.
Oh,
That's the
yeah.
main. But I am just fascinated by excellence because it's very, very difficult to be the best in the world at anything. And what was your training regimen like on a daily basis?
So I usually whistle around 2 hours a day. And then I would do crazy things like get in my car and I drove to Graceland once for a week and whistled for 6 hours every day for 7 straight days. And the reason is that, A, you want to practice your music, but B, and perhaps more importantly, you have to get your lips in shape. You may be familiar with the French word called embouchure, and it actually has to do with the shape of and the conditioning of your lips to play a wind instrument. It could be a trumpet, a clarinet, or any wind instrument. It's the same thing with whistling, is that a pucker is not a natural position for your lips. So when you take this kind of complex musculature and stick your lips out into this very precise shape and then try to sustain that for minutes on end, I whistled Mozart's oboe concerto. It's 22 minutes long. If your lips are not in tip-top shape, they will get tired quickly, and then you will lose the perfect positioning, that embouchure, to be able to sustain the note. So that's why conditioning is so important. And then in practicing your actual song. Like right now, I'm working on Hummel's trumpet concerto. I'm performing it with the Alexandria Symphony Orchestra
Wow.
later this year. So I know the piece well, but I have to get my lips in good shape. And so it's going to be real exciting to perform classical music with an orchestra. And when I perform with the National Symphony, I mean, this is a 70-piece orchestra at the US Capitol in front of 65,000 people, and you are immersed in sound. It's probably one of the most exquisite experience of my life to have an orchestra enveloping me with sound, and then 65,000 people in front of me, and then the US Capitol lit up behind them. Nothing will ever touch that in terms of this confluence of cool things.
Do they have a part written where you get to solo whistle for a few moments?
Yep. Yeah. So in that particular song, it's a song called On the Mall, which was written in the 1920s, and it's a march. And so and it's written for Whistler. It's one of the few pieces out there actually written for Whistler. And so I performed it. And the really cool part was that at the end of the concert, they brought me back and I taught the audience the song. And then we performed it again. And I conducted this mass whistling group of 65,000 people. And that was cool. And it's a really catchy tune. And people loved it.
I mean, that's amazing. Like, on the one hand, we talked a little while ago about, how you felt insecure about, is whistling a worthy endeavor to spend thousands of hours on and compete in. And yet, look at this experience it created for you. Like, let's say one thing life, everybody debates, what is life about? Oh, be a good person, be a happy person, do this, be a successful person, whatever. But maybe life is about creating these amazing experiences. And how many people, I can count on one hand, maybe people who have had an experience at that level of amazing.
Yeah. Well, I count my blessings every day. I never could have predicted or anticipated what whistling has allowed me to do. I mean, I've whistled in the Oval Office for the president. I whistled at Major League Baseball and basketball stadiums, the national anthem. I even whistled, this is totally freaky, at the top of the Washington Monument on the outside, 555 feet in the air. And then whistling happy birthday for people, done TED Talks. It has brought me more joy than ever imaginable. And which is why I count my blessings every day that this has happened. Now, I've worked hard and I've made a point of getting good, but life is strange and you never know when crazy things are going to happen. So you've got to kind of revel in the moment. my life philosophy is that, it's not the destination, it's the trip. That's not, other people think that too, but I've embraced this philosophy since I was like 13 years old. And that's why you must kind of revel in the moment. I mean, there's always an eye towards the future, but the moment is critical.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I go back and forth on that, on what you just said. It's all about the journey and not the destination, because a lot of it is actually about the destination. Like, you had a goal, which was to win the grand competition for whistling. I feel that the destination, it sets the path of the journey, so it defines the destination, defines what you do on the journey. Like, if you're going on a quest for the Holy Grail, okay, you've got to get out. The knights of King Arthur's court had to get on their horses and travel the world and seek out information about the Holy Grail. Like, it created the journey. And when you won the competition, you probably felt better that moment than in any given day training for the competition.
Well, you're totally right. And, they are opposite sides of the same coin, arguably, is that having, and the big part of a big part of the new book is about purpose, having a destination you're going to, because I think having purpose gives us, something to strive for. So I agree with all of that, and having worked for some of the most successful people, in business and politics, they all have purpose and an objective. All right, so I agree with that. But the challenge is when today slips away because you're so focused on tomorrow. And so in a perfect world, you have purpose. Yes, I want to graduate from college with a good GPA. That's a great purpose to have. But there are, there are 1,000 school days between today and that day. What are those 1,000 days going to be like, until they hand you that diploma? And if you're fixated on, when I pay off my mortgage, then I'll be happy, or when I graduate, I'll be happy, or when I retire, then I'll be happy, which can dominate the way people think, that's dangerous. So they're not mutually exclusive.
Like, if you had never won let's say you had always come in second and third and you never took first at the competition for whistling, would you have written the book on whistling that you wrote? So the book I have here is Find Your Whistle.
Yeah. Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
So
even though you would have been the second best whistler on the planet, number 2 sucks.
Well, there is a fixation in our culture, and maybe it's the human condition, for the best. And so I do appreciate that. And, I am the kind of person that even if it had not been, the pinnacle of whistling, that I would find purpose, have that objective, but then revel in every moment. I mean, yesterday I met a security guard in an office building who helped me, figure out the elevator. I had a little fob and all that. I couldn't figure it out. And now I know her name. She has a beautiful smile. And she said, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And it would have been so easy to view that as just this fleeting transaction of, I need to get in the elevator, versus a human with a name, with a beautiful smile, who actually is looking forward to seeing me tomorrow. That matters. And arguably, the accumulation of those types of moments matter even more than, these bogeys that you're shooting for. I mean, just yesterday, my 17-year-old daughter said, Dad, she's a little shy, and she said, I want to be more like you and just talk to strangers. She said, you can learn a lot. I see you talk to strangers all the time. You learn so much. I say, yeah, I mean, we're not going to be best buddies necessarily, but you just never know. And, those things matter. I mean, you can argue how much they matter, but I think they matter a huge amount.
And I mean, and arguably, not arguably, you are a trained communicator. Like, this is what you've done for billionaires for decades, is you've been their right-hand man when it comes to communicating and getting their word out there and their message out there and their goals out there. And it's been your job to talk to strangers and billionaires and presidents and so on. And again, we'll get to that in a second. One more question I have, and again, this is related to the frivolous aspect, because I am fascinated by that pause that you had when you were training, but before you won. Was there any point where you felt like you had to justify to your, I don't know, your wife or your family or your friends or colleagues or work colleagues that why you're spending hours a day doing this? Like, did you feel bad at any point during that process because, hey, I should be making $1 billion and not whistling?
Well, thankfully I was single at the time because I could barely tolerate listening to that much whistling. And when I did that Graceland pilgrimage, the 6 hours a day, I was single and alone in the car. Actually, my wife doesn't even let me whistle around the house very much. She thinks it's fairly annoying. So if I were married with children, and then I discovered this competition, I don't know if it would have worked out. So it was kind of providential that I was single when it happened.
What about though, like your friends? Like for instance, in my 20s, I left graduate school in computer science because I wanted to be a writer. I was writing all the time. And like any form of communication, it takes a lot of years actually to be a good writer. And my friends and parents thought I was completely insane. Like they really thought I was mentally ill for leaving one of the best graduate schools in computer science where my career was set if I got a PhD there, as opposed to doing something completely, who knows? Most people don't succeed at writing, and I was not a good writer at the time. So I had a healthy dose of Dunning-Kruger bias, so I thought I was good, but I certainly wasn't good. So I had to constantly question myself and answer their questions about why I was doing what I was doing.
So I'm glad you brought up writing as this, and I'm going to juxtapose that with the whistling. See, there are tons of people who call themselves writers, and
Right.
most people are used to reading things. It can be the newspaper or books or billboards. All right. So if someone like you says, I'm going to be a writer, a lot of people are going to say, oh, you know how hard it is to be a writer. Why would you bother with that? Now, with whistling, so I say to people, hey, there's a whistling competition. I'm going to try that. People are like, whistling? That's really freaky. That sounds cool. Let's hear it. So there are just so few of them that people are kind of drawn to it and view it as novelty versus the writing, which is, kind of a dime a dozen. That doesn't mean you're not a good writer. But a lot of people say, I'm going to go be a writer, or I'm going to go to Hollywood and make my fortune. But very few people say, I'm going to be a champion whistler. So people are more fascinated by it than poo-pooing it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people don't realize how difficult a skill it is to write, for instance. So everybody with a word processor now becomes a writer. Oh, you posted an article on Medium that got 20 likes. Now you're a writer. And people don't understand that just like in anything, most things are bad. So most written material is not good writing. Like I always look for great writers to inspire my own writing. And it's very, very hard for me. Like it's thousands of books I have to look at for every one that I find that, oh, this is going to inspire me to write. And and this is over 30 years of writing almost every day now. But I would imagine you're right with whistling. Like when you told me, oh, you're a world champion whistler, I was fascinated. If someone said to me, oh, I'm a world champion writer, all right. But
that's exactly it. Now, interestingly, whistling it's very binary in terms of who likes it and who doesn't. So I was in an elevator once with Newt Gingrich when he was the Speaker of the House, and my then boss, who's John Kasich, who was governor of Ohio and ran for president. And Kasich says, Newt, you got to hear Chris whistle. It's amazing. Newt wouldn't even look at me. He completely ignored Kasich. Then Kasich tries again. He's been on the Tonight Show. He's been on the Today Show. You got to hear him whistle. Nothing. So there are some people who just think it's so freaky they want nothing to do with it. And then other people, you'll say to them, hey, I'm a whistler. And they're like, their eyes light up. And this is what happened with the National Symphony. I met one of the conductors, and a friend of mine said, hey, Chris is a champion whistler. And she's like, whistle for me. So I whistle a song. And then she's like, hey, you want to perform with the National Symphony Orchestra? I said, yeah, let's do it. So it's very binary there too.
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy.
The McNugget Buddies are back. But this time, they got a fresh look as part of the new Current Frost box at McDonald's. We're talking all new buddies, dressed head to toe in the freshest fits, all designed by the artist Current Frost. So when you order the Current Frost box with your choice of 10-piece McNuggets or a Big Mac, you'll get one of the flyest McNugget buddies to go with it. Think you can collect them all? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it.
At participating McDonald's for a limited time while supplies last.
The lesson really that I take from this is that excellence opens doors, and it opens unusual doors in many ways. Like, so I'm very much into chess. I'm a competitive chess player. I'm not like the best in the world, but I'm doing something unusual, which is that after a 25-year period where I did not play in tournaments, so I'm a ranked chess master from the 90s, then I stopped playing for 25 years in order to have a career.
Wow.
And now I'm on a quest to be as strong as I was in the 90s. And just going on this quest has opened so many doors and adventures for me. Like, I was invited to go to Amsterdam next week to just watch this tournament with the organizer and of among the very great players are playing. And I can imagine for you being the best in the world at something, excellence opens doors, and it's worth it to achieve excellence in something, regardless of whether other people consider, its status in the hierarchy. Now, of course, if you were the best basketball player ever, that also has a significant monetary gain. That's the door it opens. But excellence in anything has benefits.
I think it's very well put. Whistling doesn't pay well, so I've always had a day job. But that in itself has made my whistling career even more interesting. So here I am. I'm at the Carlyle Group, this big global private equity firm. My phone rings. It's the founder of the firm, David Rubenstein. He says, "Come to my office." I walk down the hall, and there's Ted Leonsis, who is the owner of the Wizards and the Caps, or whatever they're called these days, the hockey team.
By the way,
and he said,
he's been on the podcast.
oh, good. He's an interesting guy. I've heard him speak. So David says, "Whistle for Ted." I'm like, okay. And like a kind of a pet monkey. It's like, "Hey, you, come over here and whistle." And so I whistle. And then Ted says, "Hey, do you want to whistle national anthem at a Wizards game?" So you were right. He heard it, he liked it, and that opened a door. And that's why I just count my blessings. Like all these crazy things that have happened, and
Yeah.
they continue to happen. I get to perform, go on TV, go on podcasts, and and so it's been great.
Last question about it. Like so at one point you had won the championship 4 times, and you stopped for a while, and then 5 years later you went back to try to win again. Was it? And I'm asking this almost selfishly, but did you, as you age and as you get a little rusty, do the training techniques change through time? So other whistlers have more sophisticated training techniques of who start now, or does aging result in some decline in ability? Like what did you experience when you tried to come back to it?
So I understand why you're asking this question as you seek to regain your chess status. And
Yes.
so what I realized then and now too is that there is an accumulation of ability. It could be chess ability, it could be whistling ability, that there's a certain baseline you achieve because you're doing something all the time. And then you may step it up if you have a competition or a performance, but your baseline is already high. When you take a break, your baseline falls so low that to get back up just takes a lot more than you would think. It's less about age, I believe, and more about time. So the key is putting the time in. So if the National Symphony called me tomorrow and said, "We want you to do some like really big concert in 6 months," I could get back into like tip top form if I whistled 2 hours a day for 6 months. It would be hard because I've got a busy consulting business, I've got books, and I've got children. I like to ride my bicycle, and I got to keep my wife happy. So it would be a challenge to jam it in there, but that's what it would take. And I suspect it's similar to you. You probably have to go back and just play. You have to. It's like if I want to be a good whistler, I have to whistle all the time to get the lips in shape. And I assume you have to keep playing and playing and studying the books and the moves. And
For some things, and maybe music is not one of these things, or maybe composing music is, but not playing music. I don't know. But like, as you age, you're not as sharp, like your thoughts aren't as fast, and your memory is not as good, but your ability to do pattern recognition and intuition goes up. So performing music, maybe you're able to kind of like, oh, I'm going to add this bluesy sound to this classical piece, and like you're able to kind of assimilate other things and put them together in interesting ways, which you wouldn't be able to do maybe when you were younger. But some professions benefit from age. So like peak age for a historian is actually 69 years old, whereas peak age for a mathematician is 25 years old, where you would require more sharpness and more memory and
wow.
so on. Whereas a historian can say, oh, this event from Afghanistan reminds me of this one battle in World War II. So you have this huge wealth of knowledge and an ability to kind of like put them together in interesting ways that you didn't have when you were younger. And that's something that sort of happens in your 40s and 50s and keeps growing. So it's interesting.
I love that point. And I love the point about adding the little bluesy thing, because I am doing that with this trumpet piece. I'm improvising in a few sections. I haven't told the conductor yet. I'm hoping he will be open to it. To say, listen, the key with great music and great writing, you could argue, is you have to make it your own. If it's cookie cutter, people are going to say, all right, I've heard that before. I want to make it distinctive. Like, for example, I listened to, so Vladimir Ashkenazy is one of the great pianists of our day. and he's a conductor now. And then his son is a clarinetist. And I listened to his son play Mozart's clarinet concerto the other day, and it was he embraced that piece like I've never seen before. All these little curls and twists and things that he added to it that I'd never heard, that I thought were appropriate, but so unique, and he made it his. So, and that's the way to do it, I think. So I'm going to try to do that with this trumpet piece to really make it mine. And if anyone in the audience knows the piece, they're going to say, "Well, I've never heard it done that way before," but still think it's appropriate and enjoyable.
That's such an important point in a variety of ways, to make something yours. So like, I think like this is very important, by the way, for employees at a job. Like if you work at a company, there's usually a history, a culture of the product of, whether is this a luxury product, is this a kids product, is it a, like I used to work at HBO very briefly, and HBO, you could tell if a show is HBO or if a show is ABC. Like there's a difference. And I feel when employees really are able to say, this is our product, as opposed to this is my company's product. Like when they really kind of feel the philosophy and culture and make it their own, that philosophy, then they succeed as employees. Like Carlyle Group is a very different kind of private equity group than Blackstone. And I'm sure you feel the nuances, what makes Carlyle and David Rubenstein different from, for better or for worse, Steve Schwartzman and Blackstone.
Exactly. When I tell people when I either teach writing to young people or kind of developing your own brand in the marketplace, I'm all about saying, understand you as a product, understand your craft as a writer, but make it your own and be distinctive about it. Not just to, be a peacock that's all flash,
Right.
but to do it with purpose so that the distinctions add value in some way. One of the big distinctions with Carlyle was that we said people like working with us more because we're not your typical sharp-elbowed New Yorker. Now, Blackstone people might have bristled at that, but we thought it was true, and that was the feedback we got. Because in the end, they have buckets of money, so do we. They have buckets of MBAs from Wharton, Stanford, and HBS, so did we. So like you had to have a differentiator, and we thought it was our culture of actually being nice to each other. Now, that has changed a lot since I left. Not for the better, but I think it's on the mend now that they have a new CEO. But that's a whole nother subject.
One thing I was going to ask you, and maybe even suggest to you, so take it for what it's worth. You should make TikTok videos doing pop culture covers of whistling of like every, like do Hotel California whistling, do a cover of some great rap song whistling. I bet you you would get like millions of, not that you are interested in this, but I get you like millions of views and followers and so on. Like I would subscribe to an Instagram channel that was all whistling covers of like my favorite songs.
What's fascinating about what you just said is, it's all about time allocation. And, even, I don't know how much money you made on your book, but making money on a book is difficult, unless you're Walter Isaacson writing about Elon Musk. So I'm always weighing, I get paid well as a consultant. So every hour I spend consulting for corporate America, I make tons of money. Every hour I spend working on my next book, I don't make a lot of money. But I get great satisfaction out of creating the whistling book, creating this new book about the billionaires and the parking attendant. And money is less important to me now than I'm 60 years old and financially secure. So I try for a balance. But to get specifically to your point about like TikTok and social media, is that I tend to avoid social media because it is a rabbit hole. Because people say to me, how do you have time to write a book? And I say, well, I don't sleep that much. I don't watch TV and I don't do social media, which actually frees up a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be judgmental. If social media is your thing, that's fine. But the odds are, if you spend a lot of time doing that, you're probably not going to write a book. But if that's not your thing, then hey, that's cool.
That was more selfish request because I want to listen to some rap song being whistled. So I would just love to hear stuff like that. Wow, I really was fascinated. I'm always fascinated in what it takes to become the best in the world at something you love, or even just to excel at something you love, which is very, very difficult. But obviously, it's an incredible story. If you want to hear Chris whistle, stay tuned because in part 2, which covers his latest book, 4 Billionaires and a Parking Attendant. First off, you should pre-order the book or order the book on Amazon. Second, part 2 is amazing. Stay tuned for it. And at the end, he whistles.
Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform is making it easier than ever to support Black-owned brands. When you go to walmart.com/Black and Unlimited, you'll not only get to shop products from Black-owned brands, but also learn about founders like Janelle Stevens of Camille Rose, which specializes in products for naturally curly hair, or the Allison Devon, founder of T-Spressa, and there are many more awesome products that you have yet to discover. It's all easy to find with Walmart's Black and Unlimited platform. Join in on celebrating Black brands today and every day at Walmart. We are Black and Unlimited. Visit walmart.com/Black and Unlimited to discover more. That's walmart.com/Black and Unlimited.
The McNugget Buddies are back. But this time, they got a fresh look as part of the new Kerwin Frost box at McDonald's. We're talking all new buddies, dressed head to toe in the freshest fits, all designed by the artist Kerwin Frost. So when you order the Kerwin Frost box with your choice of 10-piece McNuggets or a Big Mac, you'll get one of the flyest McNugget buddies to go with it. Think you can collect them all? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it.
At participating McDonald's for a limited time while supplies last.